Today we're living through these unprecedented times that none of us have been through before. This state of lockdown that we're in shows the seriousness and the urgency of what we're going through. Our freedom to move around and our ability to go where we want to go have been restricted, so that most of us are forced to spend all this time in our own homes. Some of us are experiencing what you might call cabin fever. Perhaps you're more irritable, you're experiencing feelings unlike anything before. Maybe you tell yourself that you can handle it, but there is still an uneasy feeling. We're thrown together with people that we don't normally spend this amount of time with. Or we're spending a lot more time alone. The things that we normally give our attention to are at the moment put on hold. This means that we have more time to think, more time to ponder, and inevitably we will revisit some issues in our minds that we haven't thought about for some time. Questions about our existence, questions about the meaning of our lives. Usually these questions can provoke uncomfortable feelings, which we can tend to push to the back of our minds. As a local Christian pastor, I consider it my responsibility to speak to you, my community, at a time like this. My name is Ian and I'm from Bradford, West Yorkshire. I was brought up on a council estate in a large family during the 60s and 70s. I wasn't exactly encouraged to get involved with anything religious. I was brought up in a challenging environment, and the school I attended didn't really encourage me to entertain any great aspirations. In fact, I left school with no qualifications. My working life consisted of a short-term, dead-end jobs, and in the early 80s there was a lot of unemployment, and many of my former school friends found themselves unemployed and without any prospect of a decent future. There was a lot of escapism around that time, as well as drugs and mysticism. I found myself in long-term use of soft drugs such as cannabis. And with heavy and constant use of this, my mind became very disordered. I began to entertain some very strange and weird ideas about myself. In the winter of 1985, I was walking late one night in quite a remote area near some woodland, down a very narrow country lane. And around this time I'd been really pondering the meaning of my life and wondering where it was all going and where it would end. Although I didn't believe in God, but on this night I did begin to speak to him. I started to take an honest look at the meaningless life I was living. Somehow I instinctively knew that there was definitely a God. And as I began to talk to him, I realised that he was my maker, and that he was of a totally different kind and character from myself. I was quite scared of him, because I knew that he had seen everything that I had done. I was afraid of being judged by him, because I knew honestly I didn't have a leg to stand on. I knew I'd broken most of his commandments, if not all of them. I knew that I'd some kind of obligation hanging over my life, that I really should be living a different way. from the way that I had been living. It seemed like a hopeless situation. But as I cried out to God, He did start to lead me, and He started to speak into my life. And He actually prompted me to go to speak to a Christian minister at a church. I did this, and the man explained to me who God was and what God said. And he showed me from the Bible that God had come into His own world in order to deal with this, my problem. And He came here in the form of a man called Jesus Christ. And He demonstrated very clearly who God is and what God requires. After living a perfect life, He then laid down His life by being crucified on a Roman cross as an innocent victim of rough justice and religious rejection. And through this act of dying on a cross, Jesus has made the way for people like you and me to be reconciled with this perfect God and to begin to live in a different way. I'm now moving toward the granddad stage of my life, but I have absolutely no regrets about following Jesus for most of my life. Let me tell you that at this time of coronavirus, many of the things that we are preoccupied with or have been preoccupied with, such as sport, fitness, football, entertainment, travel and holidays and drinking together, and all the many things that we get up to are all put on hold. Despite all of this, we still try to squash down these inner thoughts on these crucial questions. Now, I'm appealing to you to talk to the God of heaven. This does not make you insane, but this makes you actually very human. A being created in the image of God, and a person who needs God's help. He is willing to listen to you, to help you, and to save you, if you come humbly and honestly, and are willing to listen to what He has to say. I really plead with you to do this while you have the opportunity. When you are back to your normal activities, you may not get this opportunity again. So please, consider what I've said.